Can we have the children, please? Good morning, children.
Good morning.
I really want to thank this class, this senior high school class, who come down here and participate. And thank you for all being in Sunday school this morning. That's great, all of you. So I appreciate that. Okay, now the candy came back, the one I forgot to bring over this morning. So, which is better, this old candy or the new candy coming in? You'd probably say the new one. Now we poured it in so you can't tell the one from the other. Pretty smart, huh? Actually, there are only 4, so your chances of getting a new one are really good. Let's see. What's better, one of these little bars or a rotten piece of meat? Rotten piece of steak. Why? Steak is bigger. And this isn't rotten. So it's okay if it's not as big as a steak. Would it be as good if it was as big as a steak if you ate that much chocolate? Probably make you upset. Okay. Which do you think is more important? A friend who is short or a friend who is taller? Depends upon what friend. So it isn't necessary that a bigger friend is better than a smaller one? Which is more important, your little sister or some stranger down the street? Everybody's okay. Okay, doesn't matter whether. No. Okay. What's the most important possession you have in your life? Is there anything that you have that's really important to you? What do you play with the most? Your VR headset. And how big is that? It's small. Do you have a bicycle? Do you care about the bike at all? Kind of. But the little one is more important to you. Yeah, okay. What's the most important object in your life? Well, you can answer as well as anybody. Don't look at me, she says. What's the most important thing you have in your house for you? What was the first question answer? Plushie. What is that? Is that the animal? Oh, plushie and God. That's a wide diversity. And parents. Okay. What do you think would be more important, a parent or a new car? All of you would say parent. Car is bigger. Aren't we concerned about bigness here? Okay, well, that's just a lead into the sermon today. So let's have some new candy. It's all on top, the other was in the bottom. Give them a hand, please. Holy Gospel is written in the 16th chapter of Luke, beginning at the first verse. Then Jesus said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. Then the manager said to himself, what will I do now that the master is taking the position away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I've decided to do so that when I am dismissed as a manager, people may welcome me into their home. So summoning his master's debtor one by one, he asked the first, how much do you owe my master? He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he asked another, and how much do you owe? He replied, 100 containers of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and make it 80. And the master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. And whosoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. There are so many ways that you can go with the gospel this morning, but for some reason I couldn't get my eyes off that little passage that talks about whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. We are overawed by the big things, the big story, the trial of the century, the scandal that is a scandal all scandals, accidents, bigger the better, tragedies, the more in number, the more it makes the news. We measure earthquakes by the Richter scale, although we really don't know how much that really is, except that we know once it gets above 7, it causes a lot of problems. It's important. We like the tallest building, the biggest dam. It's also important in business. Record profits. Oh, doesn't that make us happy when we own the stock of that company that has record profits? No matter how much or what way that profit was made. We are astounded by bigness. Today, I would like to concentrate on the little things. Joni James, if you remember, had a song, Little Things Mean a Lot. We played that with not much real attention to the details of the song, but it is, in reality, very much a fact. Little things mean a lot. The author who studied death and dying and wrote a book entitled Death and Dying, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, talked about what people talk about on their deathbed. This is particularly interesting to me because I do that a lot. I spend people's end times with them. I listen to what they reminisce about, what they talk about, what was important in their life. And so often, as Kubler-Ross says, it is not the great big events. It is not the number of cars they had, the bigness of their house, but it was on some little meaningful moment in their life that they could not forget for anything, that stays with them until the day they die. An unsolicited gift, nice comment, a special little trip, a hug, something very small, but leaves a lasting memory. And becomes a symbol for something that was so precious in their life, like a devoted spouse, or a devoted friend, or a special event in what they practiced as a profession that gave them meaning and significance in life. Life has its months, months has its days, days have its minutes, and minutes have their moments. And sometimes it is the little moments that we remember so much profoundly than the big things. Billy Graham, the great evangelist, told many, many good stories, but he told a story about when he started going from city to city and doing his special events, his crusades. He started out real small, going to little places. It wasn't Yankee Stadium when he began. That was at the end of his ministry. But when he first went out, he went to little towns and spoke at the local Baptist church. And one day he said, I was driving into this little town and I had a letter that I wanted to send to Ruth, his wife. It was all, had a stamp on it, ready to mail. And he drove into this little town and he saw a little boy on the street. And he said, can you tell me where the post office is? And the boy told him where the post office was. And he said, well, thank you very much. He said, you know, young man, I'm speaking at the Baptist church tonight, and I can tell you how to get to heaven. And he said, I don't think I'll go. You don't even know the way to the post office. I think that's kind of a symbol of our life. We have great theology, committed great portions of Scripture to memory. Church attendance is great. But spiritually, sometimes we don't know the way to the post office. But little things are important. Someday, a time ago, there was an article in one of the major newspapers, and it centered around how much time preachers take to write sermons. And they say the average time of a pastor's time during the week, if he's full-time and is a 40-hour week, which is kind of a non-event, but they said usually 8 to 16 hours a week is spent in a preparation for a sermon for 15 minutes. And the shorter the sermon, actually, the better crafted it is. And this editor that was writing about this he said, over the period of time, in 30 years, I have attended church and heard 3,000 sermons. And he said, I don't know if I remember one of them. He said, maybe the ministers are spending too much time in the pulpit. There are some people who agree. In response to that article, there was somebody that wrote in. And he said, I have been married for 30 years. over that time, I've eaten 32,850 meals. And he said, I can never remember the ingredients of any one meal. But he said, over those 30 years, that has sustained my body on a daily basis. It has given me nutrition. And even though I didn't know what I was eating necessarily in terms of ingredients, it kept me alive. And if I hadn't done those, if I hadn't eaten those, I would have died. And he said, this is what it's like for sermons. You might not remember them closely, but somehow by being there and listening to the word preached, it sustained you on a weekly, daily basis. It was that little thing that you regard as unimportant that kept you alive spiritually. Big things in life have an impact, but little things can make an even bigger impact. We can be just fine on a given morning, and some idle word, some crossword, some person treating you poorly, and somehow the balloon of the day just bursts, and you feel bad. And just one bright comment, one congratulations, one hug, one wink of an eye can do so much to make the day so powerful. And you have the power to do that. On Friday morning, the person came down to talk about the sign on the road. And he came in the door and he said, "Oh, you're handsome." I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, Jerry." Jerry is the one who did the sign 10 years ago and worked with me on that. He said, "Jerry called me this morning and he said if I'd have known you'd gone to New Sweden, I'd have gone along. Just say hello to Hans." And I said, "You wouldn't have had to tell me that story, but you just made my day." And I can go through the day just somehow 10 years in somebody's life away for an hour. I made him want to come back. Just little things like that. The text tells us to be faithful in all things. If you're honest in little things, you'll be honest in big things. And if you're dishonest in little things, you'll be dishonest in big things. All of the things about Jesus talks about in his stories, his parables, that give you the directive for life are scattered with little things. Hairs on your head, birds, mustard seeds, flowers in the fields, lost coins, tugging at the garment, the widow's mite, taking time for children, the washing of feet. And the primary thrust of the gospel is said in these words: if you give a neighbor or a brother a cup of cold water in my name, you are blessed in the kingdom of heaven. Little things mean a lot. Yes, Joni James, they do. We may believe that such attributes as compassion and kindness are of great value. But as concepts, they're not of great value. It's only when they are practiced in little acts of kindness and love, people to people, that they become important and make moments that are memorable in somebody's life. Steve Covey, in his 7 Habits of Effective People, talks about a little event that he had on a train in New York City. He said, we were going home on a Sunday morning, and we were on the train. We were all very sullen, very quiet. Nothing was going on. And then the man got on with his 3 kids. And he said, They were rambunctious. They ran around, and he didn't discipline. He didn't say anything to them. He was irritating practically everybody on that train car. And finally, because I am who I am, I thought it was my responsibility to tell him to make him stop. And he said, your kids are causing a real problem on this train. It's your responsibility as a father to take care of them. And he said, he turned to me and he said, yes, you're right. You see, we just came from the hospital. Our mother died an hour ago. And I'm not handling it well either. And Cubby said, in that moment, I recognized the importance of little things, to being a little sensitive. And what I should have said is, there's something in your life you would like to talk to me about, or you look a little despondent. I just bawled him out to take care of his kids. Stephen Covey, one of the 7 habits of effective people is that they have a sensitivity to the small. He who's faithful in little things is faithful in much. See, we can all do little things. We can hug. We can feed a hungry person. Give a drink to the thirsty. Be friendly to someone who's lonely. Just little things. We don't have to be the savior of the world. That's been taken care of. On Thursday night, most of us received a picture of this church. And it said, this picture has 1,600,000 views. 1,600,000 views of our church because it is so beautiful. And somebody said, aren't you proud? Now listen closely because you won't like the answer. I said, no, I'm not proud. What I am is grateful. I'm grateful that I can be a part of that. But I didn't create it. It's not going to be my doing. But I'm so grateful I'm a part. And in terms of God looking at us, don't think he cares whether we've had 1.6 million views, but whether we as a people can love each other and support each other. And if we differ, understand our differences and respect the differences. It's the little things that really make a difference. For he who is faithful in little is also faithful in much. Amen. Sermon hymn, He Leadeth Me, O Blessed Thought. I didn't tell you that we're operating in the New Sweden Hymn Book today, but it is He Leadeth Me, O Blessed Thought. 39. Stand as you are able.